Hello.
Hello, namaste.
Namaste.
I'm Professor Shantanu from Bangalore.
Nice to meet you.
Same here. In fact, it's our privilege and blessed to listen today. We'll be listening you. It will be a wonderful memories.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So just a couple of minutes by 8, I think Indian Standard Time, everyone will join up, 8 p.m. Then we'll start off. Another just 4 or 5 minutes time.
Okay. In the meantime, we can come to know each other. Sorry?
It's very early morning in US.
Not very early. It's 10:30 in the morning, but yeah, it's early.
Yes, sir.
It's early when you are retired.
That's true.
I read about the institution, Seshadripuram. It's quite a fascinating story.
Yes. It's around 90 years now. And the two ladies, philanthropist, Anandamma and Sitama, one of them is a niece of Sir M. Visvesvaraya, the great engineer of India.
Right. I'm sure when they started this, they didn't expect it would be so big.
Yes, that's true. They started with 14 kids. Now it's more than 25,000 kids.
Yeah.
Just 2 minutes, sir. I'll be back.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So let's start sharp at the time.
Okay. I'm ready whenever you are.
Yes, sir. No, definitely. So it's an humble welcome to our most eminent Arun Manilal Gandhiji, the fifth grandson of our father of the nation, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhiji. In fact, it's pleasure to welcome you to celebrate 151 birth anniversary of our great father of the nation. So to just tell or introduce our esteemed guest, born in 1934 in Durban, South Africa, Arun is the fifth grandson of India's legendary leader, Mohandas K. Mahatma Gandhi. Growing up under the discriminatory apartheid laws of South Africa, he was beaten by the white South Africans for being too black and black South Africans for being too white. So Arun sought eye for an eye justice. However, he learned from his parents and grandparents that justice does not mean revenge, it means transforming the opponent through love and suffering. Grandfather taught Arun to understand non-violence through understanding violence. If we know how much passive violence we perpetrate against one another, we'll understand why there is so much of physical violence plaguing societies and the world. Gandhi said, through daily lessons, Arun says he learned about violence and about anger. Arun shares these lessons all around the world for the past 5 years. He has participated in the Renaissance Weekend deliberation with President Clinton and other well-respected Rhodes Scholars. In recent years, his engagements included speaking at the Chicago Children's Museum and the Women's Justice Center in the Ann Arbor, Michigan. He also delivered talks at the Young Presidents Organization in Mexico. The trade union leaders meeting in Milan, Italy, as well as the Peace and Justice Center in St. Louis, Missouri, sometimes his journeys take him even further. Arun has spoken in Croatia, France, Ireland, Holland, Lithuania, Nicaragua, China, Scotland, and Japan. Also, he is a very popular speaker on college campuses, and in recent years, he has spoken at North Dakota State University, Concordia College, Baker University, Morehouse College, Marquette University, and the University of San Diego, to name a few. Arun is very involved in social programs, as his grandfather was, and writing as well. Shortly after Arun married his wife Sunanda, they were informed that the South African government would not allow her to accompany him there. Sunanda and Arun decided to live in India, and Arun worked for 30 years as a journalist for the Times of India. Arun and his late wife, Sunanda, rescued over 125 orphan children from the streets and placed them in loving homes around the world and began a center for social change, which transformed the lives of millions in villages in the western state of Maharashtra. Together, Arun and Sunanda started projects for the social and economic uplifting of the oppressed using constructive programs, the backbone of Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolence. The programs changed the lives of more than 500,000 people in over 300 villages, and they still continue to grow. In 1987, Sunanda and Arun came to the US, and in 1991, they started the M.K. Gandhi Institute of Nonviolence at the Christian Brothers University in Memphis, Tennessee. In 2008, the institute was moved to the University of Rochester, New York. And in the 17 years of the Institute life, the Gandhis took the message of nonviolence and peace to hundreds of the thousands of high school and university youth around the US and much of the Western world. In 1997, Sunanda and Arun began the Gandhi Legacy Tour of India. In 2012, Arun expanded the business and developed two additional tour itineraries, the Gandhi Lifescapes Tour of India and Gandhi Satyagraha Tour of South Africa. Sunanda died in February of 2007, and the family is working to establish a residential school in the poorest rural India in her honor. Arun founded the Gandhi Worldwide Educational Institute in 2008, headquartered in suburb outside of Chicago. This institute was founded to promote community building in economically depressed areas of the world through the joining of Gandhian philosophy and vocational education for children and their parents. Arun is the author of several books. The first, A Patch of White, is about life in prejudiced South Africa. Then he wrote two books on the poverty and politics in India, followed by a compilation of M.K. Gandhi's Wit and Wisdom. He also edited a book of essays on world without violence, Can Gandhi's Vision Become Reality? And more recently wrote The Forgotten Woman, the untold story of Kasturba, the wife of Mahatma Gandhi, jointly with his late wife Sunanda, and his best-seller legacy of Love, My Education in the Path of Nonviolence. In March 2014, Grandfather Gandhi was released, a picture book for all the ages by Arun Gandhi, Bethany Hegedus, illustrated by Evan Thorpe. So, notable interfaith activities: Washington Post Interfaith Dialogue, Board of Interfaith Alliances, Interfaith March 1911, Gandhi Legacy Tour, and so forth and so on. So, I would like to request our esteemed speaker, Arun Manilal Gandhi ji, to enlighten, enthrill us, and I definitely feel he will walk the talk because he is the grandson of our father of the nation and will definitely enrich us with the rich experience of our father of the nations imparted in him. Over to you, sir. On behalf of Seshadipuram Group of Institution, an institution which is serving the poor to poorest, rich to richest since 1930, Harijan Sevak Sangh, established by Mahatma Gandhiji in 1932, Gandhi Peace Foundation, Gandhi Smarak Nidhi, and Central Gandhi Smarak Nidhi, both Central and Bengaluru, welcome you wholeheartedly and request you to enrich and enthrill us. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for this wonderful introduction. I don't merit all the praise that you have showered on me, but I will take it with humility. I would like to send my greetings to all the organizers for giving me the honor to be here this morning with all of you. It's evening for you, but it's morning for me here. I would also like to wish the Seshadripuram group of institutions a long life and a continued effort to educate our people. I hope that it exists for another 90 years doing the good work that it has been doing. And I know we need a lot of education. Our country is still not out of the woods. We still have a lot of people who are poor and ignorant, and we have to do a lot more work to enlighten them. I would also like to focus on education. I'm now speaking generally because I don't know exactly what the Seshadripuram curriculum is, but from what little I have learned was that it is focused more on giving a person a career and sending them out into the marketplace to be able to make money there. And I think that is only part of what we need to be concerned about. We need to educate people holistically so that they become better human beings. Grandfather always insisted that education must involve the head, the heart, and the hands, the three H's. And that means that we have to teach them how to work with their hands. We have to teach them how to work with their head, and that is the science and engineering part of it. And when the heart is involved, it's about compassion, how to show compassion to society and other people. So it's that kind of holistic education that he always insisted upon. But lately, I've been seeing in my work here in the United States, and when I go to all the universities here, and I'm sure the same thing happens in India too, that the educational institutions are geared only towards career building, and that's not enough. Grandfather's philosophy, was a very broad philosophy. Unfortunately, we have taken only a very small part of that philosophy and tried to implement that half-heartedly. And most of the times we have not succeeded, and so we blame the philosophy for it. But the fact is that we need to look deeper into the philosophy, and we need to look at it with an open mind. When we look at it dogmatically, and we go back to his writings and dogmatically look at the philosophy and say that he talked about khadi, and so we must focus on khadi. Now, he talked about khadi at that time when it was very relevant because the British were taking the Indian cotton away to Britain and bringing back the cloth and selling them at very exorbitant prices. And the result was that the poor people were unable to buy those clothes, and so they were practically half naked. But today, khadi doesn't have the same relevance, doesn't have the same importance as it had at that time. So insisting on khadi as being the way of solving all the problems in India today would be a ridiculous thing to do. And that is why a lot of the young people today kind of reject Gandhi and the philosophy because they just can't relate the philosophy to what is happening today. The philosophy has to be a vibrant philosophy. It has to be a living philosophy. It has to continue to change with times so that people can understand it and make it relevant for their work today. We have not done that with Bapu's philosophy. And that is one of the reasons why there's a lot of misunderstanding there. My understanding of his philosophy through not only reading his works, but also through my short period of life with him and the longer period of life with my parents who also lived and practiced his philosophy. All of that put together has given me a different vision of his philosophy. And that vision is that nonviolence is not just a tool for conflict resolution, it is a tool for personal transformation. When I was living with Bapuji, he used to make me make a list every day of all the things that I considered to be my weaknesses. And then he would make me transform those weaknesses into strengths. Now, when you put down your weaknesses in writing on a paper, then you have it in black and white right in front of you, and then you can focus on each one of them and transform those weaknesses into strengths. This is what he did in his life to become a Mahatma. He was not born a Mahatma. He made himself a Mahatma. Today a lot of people think that he was born, great and privileged person, and was born a Mahatma, so he was a saint from the birth. Now that is all wrong. He was very ordinary person, and he made himself by improving himself into a Mahatma. And that is what he insisted all of us need to do, because we are all born with weaknesses. And because of our incomplete education, we only look at part of our weaknesses and transform them, and not look at the other parts of the weaknesses. And so we live in a kind of incomplete state. So we need to understand that education is not just what you get in schools and colleges, and it's not complete when you get your certificate and you come out of schools. Education is a lifelong thing. It is something that you have to pursue every day of your life, even after you get out of school. The difference is that in school you have a professor who teaches you, and you have textbooks from which you learn. But in life, you don't have any professors and you don't have any textbooks. You are the textbook and you are the professor, and you have to make that effort to become a better human being. And that is how we improve not only ourselves, but improve our societies and everybody around us, because then we learn about compassion and love and respect and understanding, and we be able to use that to build a community. Today we don't have communities. We live for ourselves. We have become very selfish and greedy, and we live for ourselves. We want to become, successful in life, and so everything is focused on the individual. We even tell our children right from the time they start going to kindergarten that they have to be successful in life, and they have to reach the top by any means possible. And that is the first seeds of selfishness that we are planting in our children when we teach them that kind of a lesson. And that is what has happened over the years, making all of us so selfish and self-centered and greedy that we don't want to think about anybody else. We just want to think about how we can reach the top, how we can grab the biggest share of the pie and become successful in life. That is not civilization. That is not building a civilization. That is just building yourself and taking pride in what you have achieved for yourself, but you have not contributed anything towards building a society. We see the effects of that everywhere today. I live here in the United States, and as you can see, we have a lot of strife in this country because of the color prejudices and race prejudices that have erupted suddenly. We see the same thing happening in India with the caste system. so many years after the independence in India and after civil rights were granted in this country, we still find people so far apart that integration is not even thought about. It's not even something that we can dream about. And why is that happening? And that is because we are not concerned. We have been teaching people to tolerate differences. Tolerance is not what Bapuji wanted. Tolerance is something that you have to tolerate because you can't do anything about it, but you don't have to like the person or the thing. And that is not how human relationships should be built. We need respect to build better relationships, and that is lacking today. Now, Bapuji always insisted that relationship between people must be built on the four principles of respect, understanding, acceptance, and appreciation. We have to respect ourselves and respect each other and respect our connection with all of creation. Now, that is very important because today, in the modern age, people have grown up to believe that we are independent individuals and we can do whatever we like and it's nobody's business. We are not independent individuals. We are interdependent, interconnected, and interrelated, not only as human beings, but with all of creation. So we have to respect that. And when we respect that, we will understand who we are and what we are and why are we here on earth. We are not here by accident. Each one of us is here for a purpose. But we need to find that purpose. We need to find out what our role in life is and what our purpose is. And at the very least, the purpose for each individual is that we leave the society we are born in better than we had found it. Our existence should make that society a little better than we had found it originally. And that is how we can fulfill our purpose in building a strong community. And when we find that purpose and understand that purpose in life, then we will be able to accept each other as human beings and not identify people by all the divisions that we have put upon ourselves. Today, we have put upon so many divisions in people. We have race division, color division, caste divisions, religious division, you name it, and we have a division and we divide people accordingly. Every time we divide a person and we are building a wall between that person and ourselves, and every time we build a wall between people, we are creating a potential for conflict. So we have to look at people as human beings and forget about all the divisions and differences that exist between us and just learn to respect and treat each other as human beings. And it's only when we do that that we will be able to accept our own humanity. So these are the four principles on which Bapuji taught us to build relationships. And if we build those relationships, then we will be able to get rid of all these prejudices that we have in our minds and start looking and respecting each other as human beings and respecting nature and respecting animals and respecting everything as part of our existence. Everything is interrelated and interconnected. We cannot exist by ourselves if there was no nature and no animal life and so on. So we have to be cognizant of this and understand this. But also we have to understand what we mean by violence. When we talk about violence today, we are talking only about physical violence, about the fighting and wars and riots and all the things that are happening in society everywhere. We are focused more on physical violence, and we want to put an end to that physical violence. But we don't ever talk about the violence that each one of us is committing all the time, every day in our lives, because our lives have been built on that kind of a system that generates more violence. When we live with greed and materialism and selfishness, we are creating so many acts of violence there that we don't even recognize that as being violent. We overconsume resources, we throw away resources. In the United States alone, I read in the New York Times not long ago that we throw away 60 billion, that is billion with a B, $1 billion worth of food every year is thrown into the garbage. Now, if the United States alone throws away so much food every year, imagine what all the other countries in the world are doing at the same time. And with all that food going down the drain, when there are millions of people living in the country with who have no food to eat and living in hunger, that is the greatest form of violence. When we accept poverty in our midst and think that, well, they are useless and stupid people, they cannot catch up with society, we need to forget about them and enslave them, we have created a whole modern concept of slavery. In the old days, they used to go and buy people and enslave them and treat them badly. But today we have found a new way and modern way of slavery, and that is keeping people in poverty. That is where we get people who can be exploited, and we use them as cheap labor and exploit them, and we keep them in that kind of poverty all the time. Now, all of these things are forms of what Bapuji called passive violence. And it is this kind of passive violence that we unconsciously commit every day of our lives that generates anger in the victim, and the victim then resorts to physical violence to get justice. So it is passive violence that fuels the fire of physical violence. So logically, if we want to put out that fire of physical violence, we have to cut off the fuel supply. And since the fuel supply comes from each one of us, we have to be the change we wish to see in the world. If we don't change, the world is not going to change, and we are just going to continue to live as we are. And that's not going to help anybody. So civilization and progress means that we civilize ourselves truly and build a society where we can be proud of being part of that society. Peace does not mean the absence of war. When we want peace, we need to think about harmony, because the only way we can build peace in a society is when we can build harmony among the people of that society. And if we don't have harmony there, then we will never have peace. So building harmony in society is when all of us come together and work together to create and build a society and address the problems that exist in that society and and make progress towards creating that harmony. So these are aspects of Bapuji's philosophy that we have not paid much attention to, and the result of that is that we are still far, far away from the dream that he had of creating an India that would be an example of non-violent living in the world. But today, India has become the most violent country in the world, and it's, I don't know, miles and miles away from Bapuji's philosophy. And unless we all get together, understand his philosophy, understand what he was trying to say, accept it with an open mind and willing to transform and change that philosophy, uh, uh, holding truth as the main theme of his philosophy. We are not going to go very far anywhere. We are just going to be like be in a cesspool of mud, just wallowing in that for the rest of our lives until our whole civilization is destroyed. So these are some thoughts that I thought I would share with you. My heart aches at what has happened in India recently, and especially the ill treatment of women. I mean, we have a civilization where we should be treating everybody equally. It's not a question about women and men being separate and one being superior than the other. It's being partners. We are all partners in life, and we ought to be able to give the women the same respect. However poor they may be or however rich they may be, they should be given the same respect there. We tend to give the richer people and the more powerful and educated people greater respect than we do the poor and the ignorant, and that should not be the case. We should be able to treat everybody equally, give everybody the same respect, and help those who are lesser than us to catch up and be better and join us. Sheshadripuram group of institutions has the historic record of what women can do. Two women came together and started a little school in a little room, and today it's become a huge institution, and it's growing, and that is what should be done, and that is how we can honor women and treat women with the same respect and same understanding. And I hope that Sheshadripuram group of institutions will take the lead in molding the relationship between men and women on a healthy ground. So I would like to thank all of you for giving me this honor and the pleasure of talking to you. I hope that I have been able to convey some of Bapuji's message. Some of the messages are difficult to accept, and I apologize if I have been overstepping my bounds, but I think that we need to look at these questions and work on them. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So there are quite a couple of questions. If you could like to answer, I will ask that. Yes, sir. So the first question comes, how you felt growing under the canopy of the father of nation of India?
How I felt?
Yes.
Well, when I was young, I used to feel it very oppressive because people expected so much from me, and they thought that I would be another Mahatma or something. And, that was not my intention. And so I think I was about 15, 16 when I first told my mother, I said, I don't know how I'm going to go through life with this legacy, because it's already becoming a burden for me to carry. And my mother gave me a piece of advice that I will never forget. She said that it's up to you. If you consider this legacy to be a burden, it is just going to get heavier and heavier as you grow older. But if you consider this legacy to be a light that is showing you the path ahead, it'll be easier for you to live with it. And so since then, I have seen this legacy as a light that's showing me the path ahead. And so it's become easier to deal with it.
Okay. The next question comes. What were the most precious moments you spent with your grandfather? If you could, nostalgic moments, if you could share, which turned you to be a great human being.
I think all the 2 years that I spent with him, I think they were all very important and very nostalgic. But I must confess that at that time, I didn't think that these were very important lessons. After all, I was just 12 years old when I went to him. So I lived with him from 12 to 14. And I was a very playful young man, and not paying much attention to education and all these lessons. But Bapuji had a way of teaching that stayed with you in your mind, and as I grew up and began to reflect on all the things that he said, and to a very great extent, my parents built on that, and they kept reminding me and guiding me in understanding his philosophy. So it was over a period of time that it kind of changed and made sense to me, and I began to understand his philosophy. So there is no aha moment that I can say this is the time when I changed to this, and it just happened gradually. Like I said, like my parents also, when they were working in Phoenix Ashram in South Africa, my mother used to go and get clothes or used clothes from all her friends in the city and bring it out into the ashram. And she started a small shop, and where the very poor African people would come and buy whatever they needed. And I noticed that she used to hang up the clothes on display, and she would put a price tag on each of those clothes. And the price tag was ridiculous. It was like 5 paisa for a shirt, or uh, 10 paisa for a dress, and some ridiculous price like that. So one day I asked her, and I said, why do you put this price tag? Why don't you just give it to them free? And she said, no, when you give it to them free, you are insulting them. You are making them feel that they are dependent on you, they are dependent on charity, and you are, in a sense, oppressing them. But when you put this price tag, you honor them, and they feel honored that they are not taking this free, but they are buying this, uh, even if it is for a ridiculous price. So that is how, we build self-respect. Today, unfortunately, a lot of us do charity work. And our charity work, instead of building the self-respect and self-confidence of the people, it is oppressing them further. It is making them dependent on society. every time we go and feed somebody or give food to somebody, we are making them dependent on us. We are feeding them for that moment. But, what about the rest of their life? So what Bapuji said, that charity should not be done out of pity, it should be done out of compassion. And the difference between the two is, when we give people something because we feel sorry for them and pity for them, we are oppressing them. But when we work out of compassion, then we get involved in trying to find out what are this person's strengths and what can we do to make them aware of those strengths, and how can we help them to stand on their own feet and achieve things for themselves. That takes a lot more commitment and involvement, but we don't have the time because we are so uh, full of ourselves and so much into our selfish attitudes that we don't have time to spend for all of these things. And that is why what we are doing is often counterproductive.
Okay, sir. One question is coming live, that is, what is the best quality you learned from Gandhiji?
I think I would say there are two things that I learned which made a very big impact on me. First was what I told you about the physical violence and passive violence, which until then I had no idea about it. And even now, a lot of people don't understand it. And it's only when I explain to them that they realize that they are committing a lot of passive violence all the time. And that is also, it's important way of doing self um, introspection. If we individually or collectively make an effort to find out how we are contributing to passive violence, make a list of it. Every day you ask yourself, if whatever you have done to other people, if that was done to you, would you be helped by it or would you be hurt by it? And if you come to the conclusion that it would hurt you, then that would be passive violence. So if you make that honest and sincere introspection and put it down in writing, you will be amazed at how many things that we do every day unconsciously, which is passive violence, and that is contributing to the physical violence in society. So that is one important thing that I learned from him. And the second was about anger. You know, we are so ashamed of anger, and we so um, ignore it so much that we don't even talk about it, we don't teach it, we just allow everybody to find their own way of dealing with anger. And the result is that we all abuse anger. And that doesn't help anybody because that contributes to violence. Harvard University did a study on this recently, and they came to the conclusion that more than 80% of the violence that we experience, either in our personal lives or in the lives of our nations, is generated by anger. We get angry and we explode and we do things and say things that sometimes changes the course of our lives. We see the prisons everywhere full of young people who acted in a moment of madness. And now they regret it, but once you have done it, there's nothing you can do to take it back again. So learning about anger is very important. What Bapuji taught me was that anger is like electricity. Just as in the electric circuit, we have a circuit breaker. When something goes wrong in the circuit, the the circuit breaker trips and cuts off the supply, and What it is telling us is that something wrong in the electric circuit. You have to take a look at it and repair it before we can start again. The same way, anger is a circuit breaker in human emotions. It is telling us there is something wrong. We need to stop and look at it. And instead of stopping and looking at it, we just blow up and abuse anger and destroy things and cause chaos. So what we need to do is to stop and look at anger and try to use it intelligently and constructively. What he made me do was to write an anger journal. He said, whenever you get angry, don't do anything or say anything, but write a journal. But write the journal with the intention of finding a solution to the problem, and then commit yourself to finding a solution. Now that is very important, because people today, many people have started writing anger journals, but they simply pour their anger out into the journal. So whenever they go back and read the journal, they are just reminded of the anger and they get angry all over again. So we don't want the journal to be a reminder of the incident. We want the journal to help us find a solution to the incident. So if you write the journal with the intention of finding a solution, you begin the first steps of finding a peaceful solution. And that helps a lot. I did that for many years, and it helped me considerably in learning how to channel the energy of anger into constructive and useful action. I wrote a book recently. I don't know whether you have seen it there in India, but it was published by Simon and Schuster here, and it's been translated in more than 30 languages. Unfortunately, not one of them are Indian languages. It's called The Gift of Anger. And many people are intrigued and says, how can anger be a gift? And when I explain it to them, they realize that it is actually a gift.
Okay, it was really wonderful to know that. In fact, we'll try to see that the book, somebody Indian can translate, and with your permission, and we'll work forward for it. Because anger, we know, as it is one of the major, as you could tell, that it is a trip which blocks. So before going ahead, we would like to ask you, one of the participants has asked, how you felt when Gandhiji was in prison? What was the emotional calculations or emotional things going on in you?
When Gandhiji was what?
In prison, in jail.
Oh, well, when I stayed with him, he was not in prison. So he had come out of prison just before I reached there. So I don't have that experience. But I read about him being in prison, and of course, my father was also in prison several times. So it is a very painful thing that somebody you love is locked up in prison. And but in another sense, it was also a proud moment that here was a person who was standing up for what he thinks is right and doing the right thing instead of suffering injustice and accepting it. That was why Bapuji started the philosophy of nonviolence, because he said nobody should be in a helpless situation where you accept injustice without doing anything. And because, when we think of retaliation, we only think of it in violent terms. And Bapuji evolved the philosophy of nonviolence so that even an individual can take action without causing violence or destruction. But in fact, and that is another important part of his philosophy, is that there are no enemies in the philosophy of nonviolence. So you are not fighting an enemy, you are transforming a friend. The whole purpose of the philosophy of nonviolence is not to win a war or win something. It is about changing somebody, and that is important for us to also remember, because today we do launch a lot of nonviolent action, but it's always us and them. We create that attitude of enemies, and we got to win over them, and we got to we have that mentality of war, of winning and losing, and that in nonviolence there is no winning and losing. It is a change of heart.
Yes, sir. So, yeah, the last question. Could you explain the non-violence or the theory of non-violence, what you faced in South Africa, Durban, and the impact of that non-violence, either from white or from the black to you, and what theory you took it out to write so many books related to non-violence?
Nonviolence was practiced in South Africa to get change in South Africa, to get independence for the African people. But again, the problem was that it was not used totally. Just as in India, we won independence from the British non-violently, but we were not able to create that kind of a country of harmony and peace that Bapuji had envisioned. And that is because we thought that the whole purpose of the nonviolent movement was just to win independence. And like I said just moments ago, nonviolence is not about winning and losing, it's about creating. And that aspect of it we forgot. Once we got independence, we just jumped into a normal life. We accepted materialism as a way of life, and so we are where we are today. The same thing happened in South Africa. They used it, and as soon as they got their independence, they forgot about the continuation of that movement to create harmony, and they are also facing lots of problems there. Again, here in the United States, it's the same thing. They used nonviolence to get civil rights for the people, and they got the civil rights by law, and everybody went back and sat comfortably saying their struggle is over. It's not over. The struggle continues until you create that kind of integration that you wanted. We have done the same thing in India with the Harijan people, and we thought that by passing the laws and giving them civil rights and everything will be fine. We were able to achieve maybe 50% of the struggle of giving them legal rights, both in South Africa, in United States and in India. We have given people the legal rights to do whatever they want to or be wherever they want to. But the other part of the struggle of acceptance by society and integration into society has not taken place, because that cannot be legislated. You cannot make somebody respect somebody else through law. That has to come from within. And that part of the movement of building that understanding and reaching out to each other has to be done by both sides. It can't be done by just one side. It has to be done by both sides through understanding, education, and getting rid of all the cobwebs of ignorance. And that we have not done at all. We just sat back and said, well, law is there, and by law, nobody can discriminate against me. That's fine. You won the legal battle there, but it didn't bring the people closer together.
Yes. So on behalf of Seshadipuram First Grade College, Seshadipuram Group of Institution, Harijan Sevak Sangh, Gandhi Peace Foundation, and Central Gandhi Smarak Nidhi and Karnataka State Smarak Nidhi, Gandhi Smarak Nidhi, we wholeheartedly thank you for enriching us with your experiences and the talk on the anger and nonviolence. And do we know that 2nd of October is celebrated worldwide as the International Day of Nonviolence. And we are really blessed to have our Father of Nations grandson, Shri Arun Manilal Gandhiji, with us, and we can't expect more than that he has agreed and you have enriched us with the real lifetime experiences. So we thank you wholeheartedly for your kind time and encouragement and your guidance. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the honor.
Thank you so much, sir. Hope to see you soon in India once this lockdown gets over. And we'd like to tell you that our Honorable General Secretary, who is the Chairman and President of Karnataka Gandhi Smarak Nidhi, is a profound follower of our Father of Nation. And because of him and our principle that we are celebrating this 1 week program.
Wonderful. I'm very glad, and thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.